tell you something. The Jews are chosen. We, the Jewish people, are chosen. I know. A lot of people get upset when I say that.
I'm about to show you something extremely controversial. It's even illegal in the state of Israel to obtain this. And if you do obtain it, it's illegal to show it and or talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, my DNA. Now, I bet you thought it was going to be a lot crazier than that, right? Now, you might ask yourself, why is it illegal to obtain this in the state of Israel? Because it proves through your DNA that Jews around the world have no ancestral ties to the land of Israel.
We Jews have been in the land of Israel since the times of biblical Joshua.
Who is we? No, really, who is we? You live in Israel, so I don't expect you to be able to provide genetic or ancestral receipts for your claims about us Jews, because those kinds of receipts are illegal in Israel without a court order and other special permissions. The Jerusalem Post explains such a thing cannot exist as kits sold directly to the public, going on to say that they have possible effects on subjects and their families. Furthermore, the national implications of these tests could hold or affect, nice grammar Jerusalem Post, could hold or affect with Israel being a government-recognized Jewish state. Don't you just love when they say the quiet parts out loud? But since they won't let you get receipts for us Jews, I brought my own. Wow. So I, an Ashkenazi, have no genetic or ancestral ties to the region of historic Palestine, and yet Israel still claims it's my homeland, which I could move to and become a citizen of under the ironically named Law of Return.
Mizrahi Jews who were in the Islamic world, again, these are real Jews. The blue, these Ashkenazi Jews, they're not real Jews. They're converted, okay? This is something you're not to discuss at all, even though the evidence is so stark. The other issue with the Ashkenazi is that they make up 80% of all Jews in the world today, okay? And so you go to the issue and it says, like, we're here because this is what God promised to us. That's nonsense. But again, you're not allowed to discuss this, even though, again, the evidence is stark, all right?
In America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is, most likely there is something there. And most likely, maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today who are white, Caucasian people came in a little bit later on. We know that some of the greatest sages of the transmission of the Torah were converts. Africa has perhaps hundreds of millions of people with this identity right now of being from the people of Israel. Does that mean they were from the 10 tribes? Likely not. We were taught by the historians and within our own traditions that when the Romans conquered Judea, a few hundred years after that the tribes of Israel went into exile, perhaps millions of Judeans were sold into slavery, into Africa, into Rome, deep into Africa. And if you look now, you're seeing people who are most likely the descendants of those slaves who kept true. I'd like to bring up a few specific examples, because they're going to be game changers. One of them wrote letters to Israel when it became a state. And they said, we're Israelites out in Africa. You know, everyone laughed at them and they said, African Israelites, these people are just trying to jump on the first world country bandwagon. They're living in a third world country, they got nothing. We're coming to Israel, we got innovation, technology. So they're trying to get on this train because there's such a thing called the right of return.
Hello brothers and sisters, welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great. From wherever you're watching this video from, as you know, I'm your host and presenter Jewish Stories. Now, I want to talk about something. Brothers and sisters, it is just as beautiful, as good to know that everything that's good and everything that was in line with black people, all these folks tried to take away from blacks, this including the reality of black people's identity. So much and so oftentimes you've heard people labeling black people as people who are in cult, especially the black Hebrew Israelites, right? They have always been labeled as people who are in cult. But I want to take your time to, just pause and think about it in this way. Why is it that when white people were referring to themselves as the Hebrew Israelites, they were not being called delusional? That's just a question, right? And I think it's imperative for us to be constructive with how we view things and with how we shape our reality. Because the reality that both sides are having, it's a different reality. The reality that white people are having, it's a different reality to what black people are having. But now we're having a group of people that have double standards. Same example with the color of Jesus. When people were arguing about the color of Jesus, about the true color of Jesus, some folks were saying that, the color of Jesus is black and the color of Jesus is white. And any person that is trying to offend that is a person that doesn't understand history, or is a person that is a menace or a problem to history. But hey, we said, pause. Russia opened the vaults and everyone saw the truth. And now the narrative changed. Now people started demanding for a black Jesus. So when people started demanding for a black Jesus, now white people are like, black people are delusional. There ain't nobody like a black Jesus. And that was a problem to them. Now fast forward to the topic of today. Some of these white folks are calling themselves Jews. There's a big difference between Jews and Ashkenazi Jews, right? So majority of these folks that are in fact claiming to be the true Jews, they are not true Jews. They are what we call the Ashkenazi Jews. Since black people didn't claim this before, it was not a problem because that's how they refer to them. And some of these white folks will even die if you try to debate them about that, right? But good thing is that majority of people who know this truth, they don't even argue. They don't even get on social media trying to prove how they are so much connected with God. I don't see a lot of black people do that. I'm only seeing white people who are trying to prove something to themselves. Hey, brothers and sisters, I don't want to say much. I want you to watch this video, and then, I'm going to be back. I'll be giving my 2 cents in regards to this. And if you're watching me for the first time, I'm your host and Aint Stories. I'm welcoming you for this discussion. Let's have a chat and tell me what you think about this in the comment section. And then I'm going to be back where I will be, talking about all this. So let's watch the video. I'll be back.
All descendants of the Jewish people from around the world were able to move to Israel. So they said we are also. And everyone kind of laughed at them, like I said. And a few people took it serious and went out there and started studying them, learned about their culture. And a professor from Duke University went out there and did DNA testing on them. And he showed not only do they share Semitic genes from people who were in Yemen and back to the Middle East, these gentlemen, a large percent of them, have the Y chromosome to be Kohanim, to be priests. Now, if anyone who doesn't know, a priest is a specific family clan of the nation of Israel who come from Aaron, the brother of Moses, who was the first priest. And anyone descended from Aaron has the status title priest. And we found that these men in this village in South Africa called Lemba, L-E-M-B-A, carry this genetic marker to let us know that they share the same as from the Sephardic and the Ashkenaz and the population of the people in Israel today. They share the same exact DNA marker. That's mind-blowing. So everyone kind of got humbled a little bit who laughed at them and said, now what? Now what do we do about this? This could have tremendous implications. Another area in Africa you have something big happening is in Nigeria. You have the Igbo people, or Igbo, pronounced either way. There's 40 million of them, also Christians, like I spoke about before, how that could happen to the children of Israel very easily. But also a lot of them are now coming out and converting back or adopting the rules of the Torah without all the paganism that they've been practicing for hundreds of years. There's been books written about it from scholars in Nigeria, from scholars from the Jewish people. And where it gets interesting is, in America, there was a slave trade. And a lot of the slaves, a very high percentage of them, came from Western Nigerian ports. And in America today, you see a very large movement of African Americans who say that they're the real chosen people, that they're the children of Israel, they're the Judeans. You know, so what are they just trying to create an identity for themselves because they were slaves, or is there really something here? And the answer is most likely there is something there. And most likely maybe that they were the original Israelites, and maybe that the Jewish people today who are white, Caucasian people came in a little bit later on.
The Jews are chosen. We, the Jewish people, are chosen. I know a lot of people get upset when I say that. It's in the Torah. I didn't make this up. If I made it up, you think I would be podcasting right now? If I was this brilliant to be the one that said the Jews are chosen, you think I would be podcasting right now? I'd be sitting, owning buildings somewhere. It's in the Torah. The Jews are the chosen people. I didn't make it up. There's plenty of other people, namely Hashem, that you could take it up with. The Jews are chosen, but we're not perfect. No one ever said the Jews are perfect. Most importantly, the Jews never said that we are perfect. Why we are held to unattainable standards of perfection more than any other race, religion in the history of race religions is beyond me. We're chosen, but we're not perfect. We'll be the first to tell you, we ain't perfect. Israel ain't perfect. And we never said we were, and Israel never said it was.
Long story short, I'm 19, I go to King's and I study religion, philosophy and ethics. And I studied Judaism. I'm a Muslim, but I chose to study Judaism, and I read Arthur Koestler's The 13th Tribe of Israel. And he says that Ashkenazi Jews, they were European race that converted to Judaism.
Can we have the questions
fast,
please?
So my question is, do you think that there are some Jews living in Israel who are originally of European descent, not like you say, they were historically the most historical people that's ever lived in the land in Israel, or do you think that's just another lie as well?
So I didn't actually understand the question. I'm so sorry. I didn't quite understand what you were talking about. Were you saying that some Jews are not Jews? Is that your point?
You were saying that Jews, they're the most they are the longest people who have lived there for the longest time historically, but some Jews have converted from European Christians to Jews. So actually, they weren't the longest people that lived there because they used to live in Europe. So maybe Palestinians were the longest people that have lived there because they were living in Europe.
The simple answer to your question is that the Jewish people are the only people for whom the land of Israel was ever their national kingdom. Several hundred years before Islam was invented and the Arabs invaded. And that is the point I was making. They are the only people for whom Israel is their national kingdom. The fact that many Jews haven't lived there is self-evidently true, but that is not the point.
8 years ago, I did a DNA test because I was curious what my DNA was. Now, my mom is Jewish, my dad is not. And on the Jewish side of my family, every single person ever has married someone Jewish until my mom. So I knew on my mom's side, it was going to be something like 50% Jewish. I knew that was going to be for a fact. My dad's side, I wasn't really sure what it was going to be because my dad's family has been in America since like the 1600s. So I got my results back, and obviously it was something like 50% Ashkenazi Jewish. But my dad's results were something like 30% French and German, 20% British and Irish, and then a bunch of other random stuff. That was 8 years ago. I just got an email that my results have been updated. And I was like, what? I haven't checked my DNA results in a long time. So I just logged in, and you're not gonna believe this. Before I show you these results, I just need to share for anyone that doesn't know, I lived in England for 7 years by myself. I moved there for university. I ended up staying because I loved it. I have no family in England. I just always had this calling, like I needed to go to England. I didn't know anyone there. I ended up making the most amazing friends and people that became like family to me. But yeah, this is my updated result. Okay, so obviously we have the almost 50% Ashkenazi Jewish, but hold on, 45% English? 45% English? Also gotta love the 2% Scottish. You're telling me I lived in England for 7 years and I didn't know I was nearly half English? I was on either student visas or work visas my entire time there. I feel like there's a passport in there somewhere. I feel like I can try to finesse some, I know they're no longer part of the EU, but some sort of British blue Passport.
It's so wild to me that Israel has a law against genetic testing. Why would you need that? What about DNA test is so threatening? Unless your entire state is built on ethnic purity and the idea that you are native to the land that you're trying to steal. And if anyone were to take a DNA test, they would find out that the people that they're mass murdering to steal the land from are more genetically related closely to the people who have historically, generationally, for 4,000 years, 5,000 years lived on that land.
It's not just about the right to return, it's the fact that Is Not Real has actively stolen babies. So Yemenis, Maserati Jews were brought to Is Not Real in order to work some of the more grueling jobs because Ashkenazi state people had heavy issues with colorism, but also understood that they needed a greater population. While these Maserati Yemenis Jews were in these horrible camps, which were not clean, they went and they took the babies and put them into baby houses so that they would have cleaner environments. They would then tell the parents that the babies had unalived. What had really happened was they took those babies and gave them to Ashkenazi couples to raise. So these babies were forcibly adopted. During the Nakba, IOF soldiers took Palestinian babies and gave them to their wives who could not bear children. So that means that a lot of the state of Israel is made up of forcibly adopted Arab children who, if they did genetic testing, would realize that their parents are not their parents. These babies, now adults, were indoctrinated with Zionist ideals. Imagine how earth-shattering it would be to realize that not only are your parents not actually your biological parents, but that you were stolen, you are Arab, and that the people that you were taught to hate are your people. That's why they don't allow genetic testing.
I will never forget the first time I went to Israel and I stepped off the plane and the first thing that anyone said to me was, "Welcome home." I wasn't told welcome home because my ancestors were from Israel. I was told welcome home because I'm Jewish. Every single person who's Jewish that steps off the plane, especially for their first time in Israel, is told welcome home. Let's just sit with that for a second. This right here, this is my actual ancestry. I am 88% Ashkenazi Jewish, and none of my ancestors are from the Middle East. Zionist ideals and beliefs are far more based in colonization, imperialism, and just white supremacy culture than it is in truth and history and ancestry. The land that is called Israel now is not my home. It's not my ancestors' home.
Hi, my name is Chaya Sarah, and I am an ultra-Orthodox Haredi Jewish woman. Ask me any question that you'd like. Now, most people assume that all Jewish people are of European descent. Those are called Ashkenazi Jews. But what they don't know is that there are millions of Jewish people of Sephardic descent, meaning their ancestors come from Middle Eastern countries and the Mediterranean. I happen to be a Sephardic Jew. Now, aside from cultural differences, like the food we eat, and no, we do not eat gefilte fish. That's Ashkenazi. There are differences as to how we follow Jewish law. For example, Ashkenazi Jews can take fish and cook it with dairy or eat it with dairy, but Sephardic Jews cannot. This is an extension of the prohibition of mixing milk and meat together because we're afraid maybe somebody will mistake the fish for meat or the meat for fish and then mix it with milk. This is just one example of the many differences in how we follow Jewish law. Now, the majority of Sephardic Jews live in Israel, but there are many pockets of us throughout the world. The biggest Sephardic community, however, comes from Morocco. Leave a comment and let me know, have you ever met a Sephardic Jew? Did you even know that there was such a thing as Sephardic Jews? Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the channel. I'm hoping that you are doing great from whatever you're watching this video from. As you know, again, I'm your host and presenter in Dr. Stories, and welcome back to the channel. Now, let's have a chat, let's have a talk about this. At the end of the day, one thing shall set you free. And what's that? The truth. The truth shall set you free. The truth shall set you free, as always. Right? Brothers and sisters. Brothers and sisters. majority of these people that call themselves rabbi or rabbi, depending on how you call them, they decide to say the truth mixed with lies so that their narrative can fit in. They don't want to be seen as, people who are lying or people who are causing problem. But at the end of the day, the reality still stands out. And the reality is, you cannot steal the identity of true people. When we say that Jews are not white, it is true that they're not white. The Ashkenazi Jews and the true Jews, when you get to look at their culture, their cultures are different. And even how they perceive the reality is also different. So you can definitely separate the seeds from the chaff. And I'm not even seeing black people arguing so much about this because they know the truth. The real Jews are melanated. We all remember when Gamal Abdel Nasser stated that the Jews left black and came back white. So knock it off. Knock it off. That's just the truth that all these folks can never fathom to believe or to agree, because the work of all these white people who are claiming to be writing history, they're lying to people about their true identity. People are taking DNA tests and they're learning that, all my life, I've been living a lie. All of my life, I've been a lie. So you're getting to understand how some people believe that they are a given group of people. They don't know their true identity. Not unless they take the test. It's called 23andMe or something like that. I'm not sure. Right? That's a type of DNA test that people take to know their lineage, to know where they come from. So, if it's anything that you can't chain to the ground, those people are going to steal it. A body, a land, identity, a culture, it doesn't matter. They are going to steal it. Then they're going to say it's legal to take DNA test to prove they are the thieves. Can you imagine the ridiculous of it all? These people have no shame in their own thieving game. And you ask yourself why. In Israel, you're not allowed to take a DNA test because they know that it is a lie. It's just a simple question. Why are you so afraid for people to know their identity? Why? Because they are going to be finding out they're not the true Jews. They're going to be finding out they're Ashkenazi Jews, they're Ashkenazi Jews. The Sephardic Jews. Right. It's crazy that people that are not referring to that identity, they're so much obsessed with being recognized, with being called, with being known by this. Hebrew Israelites were never called Jews. Nowhere in Torah in the word Jew mentioned once. In the Hebrew alphabet, there is no letter J, so there was never words pronounced with J sounds. Jew came into play in the 18th century after they converted into Judaism. Knowledge is power, and that's true. All these folks converted. They converted to be Jews. They were not Jews. They converted. When you get to understand the history of these people, initially, they were not Jews. What they did is to convert, and they converted, and now they're calling themselves Jews, right? So the question is, who are Ashkenazi Jews? Ashkenazi Jews are the Jews of France, are the Jews of Germany, are the Jews of Eastern Europe, and their descendants. The adjective Ashkenazi and corresponding nouns, Ashkenazi in singular and Ashkenazim in plural, are derived from the Hebrew word Ashkenaz, which used to refer to Germany. Most American Jews today are Ashkenazi descendants from Jews who emigrated from Germany and Eastern Europe from the mid 1800s through over 1900s. So the pages in this site are written from the Ashkenazi Jews' perspective. They are not the true Jews. Let that sink, get to understand that. Right. Somebody's saying that the guy isn't Judean, is Khazarian. They are originally pagans and not Christians. They now practice a religion they created, which was Judaism, fused with various branches of paganism. It chooses not by the gods of Scripture. They worship a different god, the god of Babylonian, Hinduism, and Zoroastrianism. It's not a god of Scripture. You all tell me what Zoroastrianism mean when it comes to religion. I want to know. Zoroastrianism, right? Brothers and sisters, so please let me know what you all think about this video, right? As you know, I'm your host and presenter Tech Stories, but until then, let me see you in my next video. Peace, love, and harmony. Salute.